Hi there, welcome to the first chapter on Introduction to UI Technologies at SAP. In this chapter, we'll look into history of SAP's GUI technologies and how it all ended up at Fiori. SAP's GUIs can be roughly classified into three types. So let's start with ABAPers' favorite, that is Windows GUI. This is a thick client, which means you need SAP's proprietary GUI software installed in your system to use this software. GUI client talks with the server using TCP/IP protocol. Let us see a quick history of the evolution of Windows GUI screens. It all started with this screen, which you cannot actually call a graphical UI. Then came better version with graphical elements, though little similarities with the Windows GUI which we have right now. Then came the version which we can identify with the current version in terms of look and feel and layouting. Then came the current family of 700 series versions, which definitely looks familiar to all of us. Windows GUI usually has complex screens, and you might be used to this screen, but for a new person coming to see this screen, this is a complex screen, and it comes packed with lots of functionalities. For example, when a sales manager opens a sales order screen, he can see all buttons and menus in this powerful transaction. When a field sales representative opens the same transaction, who is supposed to have a much lower level of authorizations, he still gets to see the same screen. Even though he may not be authorized to perform all those available menu actions. Unauthorized buttons would look disabled, or when clicked upon would throw up an error message indicating he is not authorized. That is, screens are basically not role based. Also, for someone who is new to SAP, it would definitely need lots of training to use these screens and really become productive. Screens are not simple and not intuitive at all. So other problem is that these screens are not lightweight. That means you need to install a client software to access the GUI. So the other main issue in the current generation set of UI is that these screens are not mobile ready. That is understandable, as these screens belong to another era and they were never designed keeping mobile in mind. So there were several attempts made by several companies to move these screens into mobiles, but none of them were really successful doing that. Even though most users do not like it, and maybe ABAPers like it, uh, this is this is one of the most widely used GUI for SAP. I think this is partially because lack of good options provided by SAP, and SAP hopes to change that in coming years. By 2003, SAP introduced WebDyn Pro technology. Again, a proprietary framework of web applications. Main goal was to move away from thick client and move into a web-based GUIs. SAP's competitors like PeopleSoft, Oracle, they already had a web-based GUI, and SAP was the late entrant there. Initially, WebDyn Pro was supported only on Java, and later it was supported in ABAP as well around 2005. So it had many advantages. You no longer had to install a client software. That's a big advantage. It also used a MVC architecture, which is a industry best practice. But it had many disadvantages as well. Framework was heavy, hence it loaded very slowly, and it also used many non-standard implementation of HTML technologies, which made it further slower. Screens were still not role based and not simple and definitely not mobile ready. Meanwhile, SAP also released, SAP was basically trying with various other options. Parallelly, SAP released CRM Web UI, which was again a proprietary set of technologies. Basically, I'm stressing proprietary because here SAP is reinventing the wheel in terms of how to build the screen, how to render them, how to pass data. So basically, SAP was reinventing here again, even in CRM Web UI. And later, SAP built after the CRM Web UI, then somewhere around 2004 2005 same time duration, SAP also released uh, Web GUI, which is nothing but SAP GUI, the Windows GUI screens in a browser. So the fact that these screens were introduced later and introduced later, considering when its competitor released web-based screens, and it talks a lot about SAP's priorities on about user experience. And at SAP, user experience always took a back seat. The functionalities or the capabilities of the screen, that was more and more important. So this approach resulted in a general perception that SAP sucks when it comes to the UI. By late 2009, SAP decided to change this perception. Uh, and this is about the previous screens, not simple, not lightweight, not role based, and not responsive. Coming to next, by 2009, SAP decided to change this perception and started embracing open source standards and technologies like OData, jQuery, REST, etc. It started building tools like SAP Gateway, SAP UI5, and the entire Fiori framework. All efforts culminated in 2013 when SAP announced Fiori, the first batch of SAP UI5 based, JavaScript based apps. These use SAP UI5 library. Though sounds proprietary, it is not. It is a library built by SAP, but fully made up of various other open source libraries. SAP has fully committed to Fiori, even in its roadmap. When you talk about the S4 HANA, Fiori is the default user interface. But definitely not all screens have been converted into Fiori, so that's why it still makes use of WebInfo based apps, which get launched from the Fiori launchpad. And when it comes to getting the data from backend, it uses the OData specifications. Basically, SAP Gateway creates an OData service, which is again an open standard. So unlike previous technologies, Fiori is built on open standards and open source technologies. It does not need to spend time and resources in building and maintaining a framework. Rather, it could put incremental effort to build around these standards and technologies. This is what I believe going to make Fiori a success, unlike WebInPro or CRM Web UI. Here are few sample screens of Fiori, and also the 5 design principles which Fiori is built on, that is role based, delightful, coherent, simple, and responsive. So yeah, this is an introduction to Fiori, and we will look into these design principles much deeper in the next chapter. So yeah, that's it. See you in the next chapter. Thank you.